It is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon here on Tuesday, August 4th, 2026. And I've been studying as much as I can about barber pole worm and the black scoureworm, which I don't think a lot of people know about. Those are two nematodes that tend to infect sheep. And most of the information I'm getting is coming from Australian websites and Australian experience. The key fact that I'm learning is that just rotating your animals isn't quite enough. It's good, but it's not enough. In the summertime, the parasites can survive for I think 3 months. If it gets over 95, then the parasites have a hard time. It's about 98 degrees right now, 96, 97, 98. So the parasites should all be wiped out within a week. But of course, the sheep are, even if the sheep don't have very many parasites, they always have some parasites, and you can't really get rid of them completely, and I don't think you want to. There's some, I've heard whispers that sheep with a few parasites is better than sheep with no parasites. But anyway, the key is that during summertime, the parasites don't last very long, especially in hot, dry weather like this. And but what happens is when it rains, you get like more than half an inch of rain, and all of a sudden, it's like the field comes alive with parasites everywhere all at the same time. And so you could be doing a rotational grazing, and you could be out there in an area of the pasture where there's no parasites, and then it rains, and then all of a sudden all the parasites come alive right after that rain. And then you start the infection cycle all over again. In the wintertime, it takes longer for the parasites to die out. They say it takes like 6 months, which is basically the entire winter. So if I really wanted to get the pasture as clean as possible, I would have a 6-month rotation. The animals wouldn't come back to the same spot of ground for 6 months. Now it's fine if the cattle graze where the sheep grazed, but the sheep can't come back to land they've been on for 6 months. Otherwise, there's a chance of reinfection. That's kind of the message that I got. There are some other things that I could be doing. By the time I notice that the sheep have worms, like they start to get a little bit of bottle jaw, or they get slow, or they get tired, or their eyelids get pale, you know what I mean? By the time that happens, it's too late. It really is. If I wanted to be very good at controlling the parasites, I would have to be in there checking their manure constantly and measuring the egg count, and then treating it when the egg count gets above a certain threshold, rather than reacting to symptoms. Because once they have symptoms, it's too late. The sheep are pretty much done for. But the reason why I'm taking the video here is I showed you earlier, there was one of the sheep here, the rams, that had bottle jaw. He seems to be recovering, and I don't see any signs that he's sluggish. He seems to have plenty of energy. And hopefully he's operating on an excess of calories here, getting all the nutrients he needs and all the calories he needs. But I think going forward, what I'm going to do, it's going to be expensive. It's going to take a few dollars, but it's probably going to be worth it. Is I'm going to run a water line down the center of my pasture. And the reason why I'm going to run it down the center is so that I can rotate around the water line. So I'll go this direction, and then at the southern fence, I'll cross over to the other side, and I'll come back this direction. And it even allows me to do like basically going down and then back into the middle, and then going back to the middle and then coming down, because we'll never be more than 500 feet away from the water. And if we make the rows 250 feet wide, so 1/4 the width of the pasture, then 3 hoses is enough to get to the water. And I think 3 hoses is enough, except for at the very end, it might not quite get enough water pressure, But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. If I do that, then it should be easier to slow down the rotations, put a little bit more impact on the soil, and keep the sheep off of wormy land, especially after it rains. Now, another thing I could do is I could set aside a part of the pasture where I just don't run sheep. And the only time I put sheep out there is like if it rains. I'll put the sheep on that part of the pasture that I don't keep sheep. I'll run them through that area in the summertime for like 30 days, hoping that most of the parasites die in the rest of the pasture. But then when I take the sheep off of that area, I can't put sheep back there for, another 6 months or whatever. So I basically set aside some land that's specifically dedicated to have low worm count, right? And that might be one way to manage it. I just move them there when the worms are really active, which is right after a good rain. And one more thing that people recommend is you take lambs that you are weaning and ewes that are lambing. So those are two critical phases of the sheep's life cycle when they're the weakest and most susceptible to get infected with worms. And basically, like, reserve a spot of the pasture where those sheep go that's almost guaranteed to be free of parasites. And again, you can't have sheep running there for more than 6 months, 6 months or longer. In the wintertime, 180 days, 6 months, that's what it is. So that's the thought, is I just basically rope off an area of the pasture and say no sheep allowed here, and then use it only for when, like after a rain or something like that. I don't know how well that's going to work, because sometimes we get rain week after week after week. And, I'm going to quickly run out of that pasture that I've reserved for that purpose. So I'm thinking just making the whole pasture, not letting the sheep get back to the same spot of ground for, 6 months or something like that. Anyway, that's kind of where my thoughts are lying right now. If the sheep are healthy, if they have decent genetics, and if they have access to proper nutrition, they should be able to fight off the parasites naturally. And so the other thing I'm going to study is like proper sheep nutrition. And maybe there's something I can give the sheep at different times of the birth cycle, in the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, etc. Maybe I feed them before we put the rams on the ewes or something like that. Give a better chance of reproduction and more twins. That's something else I have to study. So I'm going to continue to research and study that. I don't know how exact that science is. I assume there's a lot of guesswork there, but I don't see that I have any shortage of forage for the animals. In fact, I think it's the third day. I'm supposed to move the rams and the puppies today. And I'm just looking at the forage here, and like, they really didn't do too much. There's only, 6 rams in this area that's 150 feet by 150 feet, but you can see there's there's a lot of things they didn't touch yet. So I might keep them here an extra day or two, Anyway, that's kind of my thoughts right now. I've been thinking about that endlessly, and how can I do this better? What's a better effective strategy? And 30 days of rest probably isn't enough. I probably need more than 30 days of rest. Right now, see, I'm moving them 50 feet, 100 feet a week, basically, more or less. And so that ends up being, let's see, it's like a 30 day rotation or something like that, I think. No, that's not right. I'll have to do the math for it. 2,560 feet divided by about 100. Or 120, let's say. Say 100. And that gets you down to 25 weeks. So, let's say 20 weeks. That's 3 months. That should be right. So anyway, guys, that's all I got for you. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.